The U.S. has launched another round of airstrikes on multiple targets in Iran. The attacks come hours after President Donald Trump accused Tehran of taking too long to negotiate a deal. U.S. Central Command described the strikes as a result of Iran's unwarranted and continued aggression. Iranian media reported that explosions were heard in Bandar Abbas, Sirik and Minab in the south. In response, Iran's Revolutionary Guard says it attacked 18 major U.S. targets in the region. U.S. military bases in Jordan, Kuwait, and Bahrain were targeted. Kuwait briefly closed its airspace. These latest exchanges are testing the limits of the ceasefire. Iran has announced that the Strait of Hormuz is closed now, but the U.S. has denied that and says commercial ships have been transiting through the waterway. This is a live view from marinetraffic.com showing vessel movement through the Strait of Hormuz. The dots show stationary vessels. Arrows indicate the ones that are moving. Rory Challens is standing by for us in Washington, D.C. But first, let's bring in Al Jazeera's Tauhid Asadi, who is live for us in the Iranian capital. Tauhid, Iran says it has retaliated for the U.S. strikes. What can you tell us about Iran's response?
Well, it's the third consecutive night that following a period of relative calmness, I would say, and ceasefire, we right now witness a new round of escalation following the exchange of fire between Israelis and the Iranians on the first night. Then on the second, the initiation of a sort of confrontation between the Americans and the Iranians. And last night, of course, was the third in which Iranian territories were targeted by the Americans, resulting in retaliatory strikes by the Iranians. The Revolutionary Guards IRGC came out with a statement saying that at least 18 targets have been hit across the region in 3 countries of Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan, in which the U.S. bases are located. And also they're talking about their intention to continue as long as the American strikes continue to target the Iranian territories, about which I can say that over the last night we received reports and we witnessed actually explosions taking place in the southern areas of the country and in the southern areas of the capital. Starting from the south of Iran, we know that in the cities of Bandar Abbas and actually Sirik, Qeshm Island and Hengam Island, we have reports about explosions taking place. Also, in addition to that, in the southern areas of the capital, in Peshwa, Qarchak, Varamin, explosions are reported. And also in Qazvin province, we have reports about explosions. So when it comes to the exact information about the whereabouts of these targeted areas, we don't have much of confirmed information. However, we know that at this point, escalation is name of the game.
Okay. Let's bring in Rory Challens to this conversation now. He's with us from Washington, D.C. So, Rory, CENTCOM has released some details about this operation, which it says is now finished. But the president has been speaking to U.S. media as well. What are we hearing from the U.S.?
Yeah, the operation's over for now. At least that's what CENTCOM has said. They gave a rough list of the types of targets that they had been going after. They said that they were going after surveillance sites, they were going after air defenses, they were going after communication systems, and it was the Navy, it was the Air Force, and it was the Marines that were taking part in these attacks. They say that the targets they were striking, they were taking out because, as CENTCOM put it, they were posing a threat to US forces in the region and also to commercial shipping. So essentially, CENTCOM is painting this as a self-defense operation. Now, that is different to the language that we're hearing from the political leadership, from Donald Trump and from Pete Hegseth. Donald Trump described these attacks to Fox News when he was talking to them earlier as vicious and violent. He said that if Tehran didn't come back to the negotiating table and agree to a peace deal, that there would be more such attacks. Those words were echoed as well by Pete Hegseth. He said that Iran had been given the opportunity to take a peace deal and it had spurned it. And these were his words: if we need to negotiate with bombs, we will negotiate with bombs. We're very good at it. So we're getting two different narratives here from the military and from the political leadership. One of them is saying it's self-defense. The other is saying this is basically leverage to try and put pressure on the Iranians to come back and agree to peace.
Either way, Rory, as Tauhid was saying, it is escalation. And Tauhid, when we talk about escalation, we are not just talking about military strikes here, because Iran now says it has closed the Strait of Hormuz. What can you tell us about that?
And not only that, we are also talking about a lot of other sticking points when it comes to the intricate situation between Tehran and Washington. But getting back to the question, we know that we heard from IRGC a new statement, a very strong one, about the situation at the Strait of Hormuz. Prior to this escalation, we knew that a very limited number of ships and vessels and oil tankers were given a chance to transit through this geostrategically significant choke point. However, it was announced by IRGC that the Strait of Hormuz is now completely closed following the violation of ceasefire by the Americans, and they also warned against the ships and vessels planning to approach, saying that any sort of approaching to the Strait of Hormuz at this time is going to be interpreted as quote-unquote cooperation with the enemy, with consequences. And also they have asked the vessels and ships not to leave the anchorage in the Sea of Oman or Persian Gulf or other areas in order to approach the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, we've got this written message by the airspace commander of IRGC. He came out to say, you're making the sacred Strait of Hormuz insecure. From all across Iran, we will make the region hell for you. That's this very, I would say, strong, maybe it's one of the most strongest messages that we have been hearing from the Iranian side over the course of past few hours regarding the Strait of Hormuz. But still, we know that that is just part of the conversation. The U.S. imposed naval blockade is another part of this conversation. And to give you the bigger picture, we know that there are other sticking points in between when it comes to the controversies between Iran and the United States.
That's right. We sure do. Tauhid Asadi live for us in Tehran. Let's go back to Rory Challens now, because as Tauhid was mentioning there, Rory, the Strait of Hormuz has been so crucial in the negotiations between the two sides. It seems to be the sticking point from which both sides can't get past. What happens in the Strait of Hormuz seems to be one of the catalysts for everything else that is supposed to happen in these negotiations. So having it closed and hearing those strong words, that strong rhetoric from Iran, must be of some concern to the U.S. administration going forward here.
Well, Central Command denies that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. It says that's not true, what the Iranians are asserting. It also says it's not true. Another thing that the Iranians have said, that they struck a US warship in the region. Now, Donald Trump put out an interesting social media post earlier on where he said that a secret mission that had been going on for the last month had been, as he put it, wildly successful. And this secret mission was basically safeguarding the passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz over the last 4 weeks. And during that period, 100 million barrels of oil had got through Iran's chokehold. Now, although the US president is saying this was a secret mission, it sounds pretty much identical to Operation Project Freedom, which we were told very specifically and explicitly about a month ago, that this is what the United States was going to be doing. Now, having said that, crunching the numbers, even if it's true that 100 million barrels have got through the Strait of Hormuz over the last month, that's still way below the 600 to 650 million barrels a month that we're getting through before this war started. So that shows that even if the Iranians saying that the Strait of Hormuz is closed is not necessarily strictly true, it is still very, very disrupted, much more so than the United States would like, of course, and much more than the countries around the world would like, because this is hugely disruptive to global energy supplies. And the United States has a massive problem on its hands because, as we have seen, bombs haven't opened it up, negotiations don't seem to have opened it up, and even Operation Project Freedom has still only made a small impact on the disruption to that waterway.
And that's why it has been so important to these negotiations. Rory Challen's live for us in Washington, D.C., and Tauhid Assadi in Tehran. Our thanks to both of you for your reporting.